Okay, guys, sorry. I am back. I had to stop recording earlier because I had to get Aiden off the bus and get the kids bathed and ready for bed. And I did not expect to be recording this video all day, but it's a long one. So let's get back into it. So even before Congressman Ryan showed up in Jonestown, weeks before, Jim Jones is building his people up to hate this guy.
Here comes this man into our community, and we face them coming in secretly, some of them coming in that we know on plane, commercial plane, which will be easier to handle. Some coming in secretly, some may be coming in at night. Everyone needs to be where they belong, day or night, because these are serious people. They have turned so bad that they say, we are communist, we are degenerate, we are against Christ, and we have to kill some of them, and even some of the children. It's worthwhile to save some other children. It makes no difference how many we have to kill. We will kill to destroy. And if it provokes them to kill each other, we will do that. These people intend to do anything possible to destroy. They've convinced themselves of a lie.
He is basically saying that everybody back home is spending all their free time talking about People's Temple and what they do, how he's having sex with everybody, how they're eating babies, and he's just blowing everything out of proportion and lying. He's trying to make these people not like this guy before he even comes in. He's trying to make them think that this man's not an ally, that he's an enemy. That way they don't go to him to seek help. So Carolyn Layton, she sends a memo to Jim Jones, which she's typed up basically an analysis of the future prospects for People's Temple in Jonestown, and they were bleak. It basically said, with everything that was going on, there's no way that this is going to end well. And the portion of the memo that's most interesting is where she talks about the end, how they will eventually just all have to kill themselves. And she says, we have to do this right. It has to be done properly or nobody's going to go along with it. And it's just so commonplace the way they're discussing this mass suicide that they're planning. It's like it doesn't even faze them. This woman is literally an insane person, and she egged Jim Jones on from the moment they met. Jim Jones calls Stephen in Georgetown. He's like, get your guys back here. Everybody has to come back here. Stuff's going down. We need you here. And Stephen's like, no, we're having a good time. We've lost a couple of games and we want to redeem ourselves. We're not coming back. And Jim Jones doesn't like this. He doesn't like this direct deed of disobedience. So he once again tells him to come back, and Stephen just outright refuses to come back. So finally, Jim's like, whatever. I have bigger things to worry about, bigger fish to fry than you not listening to me. I'll handle you later, but make sure you and the rest of the guys don't talk to anybody while you're there. And if you see Congressman Leo, don't talk to him. On November 14th, 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan flies to Georgetown with a whole bunch of other people. He has with him staff members Jackie Spire and James Choate, 9 members of the media, and several defectors and family members of current temple inhabitants. He arrived at the U.S. Embassy in Georgetown, where he's basically told he's on his own. Just like the Guyanese government, they don't want to get involved in anything going on at Jonestown. They've already checked it out. They don't think there's anything wrong, and they're afraid at this point of being sued for religious discrimination. They don't want to touch it. Jones's temple lawyers are also in Georgetown at this time, and while they're talking to Congressman Ryan, saying that he's going to be denied entrance at this time and nobody he's with is ever going to be allowed to enter, they're also imploring Jim Jones to let Congressman Ryan in. They don't want this to go south. They know that Ryan basically almost wants to be denied access so that he can go back and start a congressional hearing into what's actually going on in Jonestown. But when Jim Jones finds out that he's brought the media, along with several defectors, the worst to him being the Stones, who at this point are his mortal enemies, he just gets pissed and he says nobody's coming in. It was eventually the stern talking to that Marceline gave him, which caused him to change his mind. And when I say stern talking to, she basically ripped him a new one. And everybody who was around heard her yelling at him, and they were really surprised because they'd never heard Marcy yell before. They'd never heard Marcy yell at him before. They'd never heard anybody yell at him before. And she just basically told him off and said, I've been keeping everything together. Your head's up your ass. Please let these people in. Stop making things worse for us. If there's people here who want to leave, let them leave so the rest of us can live in peace. I guess the talk was effective because eventually Jones let Ryan and his entourage into Jonestown. Now, Jackie and Ryan immediately got to interviewing people around the compound, asking them how they liked it, were they happy? And they found for the most part that people gave sincere answers, that everybody seemed to really actually like it there. At night, they had a huge dinner, a big feast with entertainment. Everybody was dancing, everybody was singing, having a great time. Jones even let himself be pulled aside to a different table and sat there so reporters could interview him. Congressman Ryan gets up and makes a big speech about how everybody seems to be happy here at Jonestown.
I think that all of you know that I'm here to find out more about questions that have been raised about your operation here. But I can tell you right now that from the few conversations I've had with some of the folks here already this evening, that whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole life.
It all seemed like everybody was having a great time. Jim Jones even got up once he received word from Georgetown and said that the Jonestown basketball team had defeated the Georgetown basketball team by 10 points that day. That was a lie, of course. They had never won a game. They weren't a very good basketball team, but it didn't matter because everybody cheered until one man, Vernon Gosley, he tried to slip a note to a reporter, Don Harris at NBC. Don Harris wasn't expecting to be slipped a note, so he accidentally dropped it when Vern shoved it into his hand. And a little boy nearby pointed at Vern and Don and the note and started yelling, "He passed a note, he passed a note." Now these kids have been trained since birth to point out any defectors, to point out any suspicious behavior. So this little kid was more than happy to just blow Gosley in. Vernon tries to recover and he just casually picks up the note, hands it to Don Harris, and he's like, "I think you dropped this," and then he walks, casually away. But he's freaking out inside because he knows this isn't the end. The note said, "Vernon Gosley, Monica Bagby, help us get out of Jonestown." That night, some forward-thinking people in the temple, they kind of realized that things weren't going well. They knew that the arrival of the congressman and his entourage wasn't a good sign. Jones had been talking for weeks about how this guy was the enemy, about how he wanted to kill him, about how much of a threat he was, and they could sense the tension rising in Jonestown since he'd arrived. They took it upon themselves, after it got dark, to leave the compound, and they snuck through the jungle and escaped. The next morning, the press was brought on a guided tour by Marceline Jones herself. She was very proud about what she had personally achieved in Jonestown, which was a working hospital, a working medical center, and a really nice school. Jackie Spire and Leo Ryan were interviewing potential defectors by the pavilion, getting their statements on tape saying that they wanted to leave.
Now, do I both understand you to say that you both want to leave Jonestown on this date, November 18th, 1978?
Yeah.
Jim Jones at this point is nowhere to be found, but he emerges several hours later and walks over to the pavilion. One of his followers then whispers in his ear, and this is when they tell him that 11 people defected and escaped the night before. And this obviously upsets him, and it upsets him only more when he talks to Leo Ryan, who says, yeah, these people also want to leave.
Last night, someone came and passed me this note.
He's the one that I'm just talking about. Yeah, this is the man that wants to leave his son here.
Doesn't it concern you, though, that this man, for whatever reason, one of the people in your group...
People play games, friend. They lie. What can I do about liars? Are you people going to leave us? I just beg you, please leave us. Bill, we will bother nobody. Anybody wants to get out of here can get out of here. We have no problem about getting out of here. They come and go all the time. I don't know what kind of game. People like people like publicity. Some people do. I don't. But some people like publicity. But if it's so damn bad, why is he leaving his son here? Can you give me a good reason for that?
So now he's highly agitated because remember, to Jones, any rejection is a huge rejection. It didn't matter if it was one person or 100. He didn't want anybody to leave. He didn't want anybody to be anywhere besides with him. So he basically puts on this front and he puts his arms around these people who are saying they want to leave, and he's like, hey, you know, it's gonna get better. I'm here for you. Things are gonna get better here. Don't worry. But they're not buying it and they still want to leave. The tension's building by the moment here. Things are getting real serious real quick. Every time a new person stepped forward and said they wanted to leave too, Jones just got more and more visibly agitated. And then the skies opened up and just poured on everybody. And they said it was the biggest storm they'd seen in Jonestown since they'd arrived. So it's raining really, really hard, and everybody runs for cover under the pavilion, into houses, wherever they can find a place to stand and not get soaking wet. And as they're in this pavilion with Leo Ryan, a lot of other people come forward and they say they want to leave too. Now, the people who were loyal to Jones started yelling at these people, calling them traitors, saying they were going to die, just threatening them. And Leo Ryan starts to get a little uncomfortable, and he's like, I got to get out of here. I got to get these people, and we have to go. Now, at this point, there was 11 people who had defected the night before and left, and there was 15 more people who now wanted to leave that morning of. And there wasn't enough room on the plane for 15 people. Now, Jim's lawyers were actually happy about the amount of defectors. They were like, it's not that many people. Only 15 today and 11 escaped yesterday. They had expected it to be much worse. They literally thought that almost everybody was going to want to leave Jonestown. So when it was only, a handful of people, they told Jim, this is a good sign. This isn't bad. This is good for us, because all they're going to do is come back with these people and say that only 2% of them wanted to leave, and it's going to make us look good. But to Jim Jones, every single one of them was a slap in the face. He looked at it as setting a bad precedent for everybody else. Seeing how easy it was to just get up and leave and there was no repercussions, he knew it was going to be like the first domino that started his empire toppling down. As they were getting ready to board the truck to leave to get to the airstrip, a man named Al Simon ran up with his 2 children. Now, Al Simon was like, I want to leave, I want to get out of here, and I want to take my kids with me. But as he's standing by the truck with his 2 kids, Al's wife runs up, the mother of the children, and she says, you're not taking my kids, and starts pulling on the kids.
Don't touch my kids! Mother! Wait, I'm taking my kids! No!
Leo Ryan sees that this is an issue. He can't take this man and his kids if the wife doesn't want the kids to be taken. But he doesn't feel comfortable leaving him here when he clearly wants to leave. And the guy, Al, he didn't feel comfortable leaving his kids, so it was a real predicament. So Leo told everybody, go ahead in the truck. I'm going to stay here, and hopefully I can sort something out with Al and his wife, and we can come to a conclusion. And then he planned to just catch another plane the next morning and get out of there. So the truck pulls away, but as it's pulling away, this short man in a poncho jumps up on the truck and says he wants to leave as well. This was Larry Layton, one of Jones's most die-hard, serious supporters, his right-hand man. And everybody on that truck who knows Larry is like, no, this guy's bad news. He is loyal to Jones through and through. He's got to go. And everybody starts discussing what's going to happen. What are they going to do? And basically, the people who are running the show say, well, we can't very well kick him off. What if he really actually wants to leave? So they let him stay on the truck, and they start pulling down the road. Now, it's really rainy and muddy, so their truck actually gets stuck in the mud, and a tractor has to come and start pulling them out. Now, while this is all going down, Congressman Ryan is still sitting there dealing with Al Simon, his kids, and his wife. And as he's trying to deal with this, another man runs up and basically goes behind the congressman and tries to kill him. He holds a knife to his throat and says, you're gonna die. Fortunately, he hesitated, and Jones's lawyers were able to pull him off and take him away. But as Congressman Ryan is sitting there, kneeling on the ground, completely shook, completely scared out of his mind, Jim Jones walks up to him, and instead of saying, are you okay? Oh my God, I'm so sorry, he says, does this change everything? So Leo Ryan is crouching in the dust in this hostile, weird town in a foreign country, looking up at a man who's literally bananas. To his credit, he didn't waver. He said it doesn't change everything, but it does change some things. And he demanded that the man who tried to kill him be turned into the police. And you know that People's Temple like to handle things internally, so that wasn't typically how they would go about doing something like that. At this point, Leo Ryan's over it. He knows he has to get out of Jonestown immediately because there's people that want him dead, and he's pretty sure that this man who held a knife to his throat did so on the orders of Jim Jones. And he was right. So the truck is still stuck in the mud right up the road, and he basically runs over to this truck and he's like, we got to get out of here. I'm coming with you. We'll sort everything else out later. And unfortunately, he leaves Al Simon and his 2 children there in Jonestown. They climb on the truck, they finally get it out of the mud, and at about 3 p.m. they head toward the airstrip. Now this was about a 6-mile drive, and with the muddy roads and the bad weather, it would take them about an hour to arrive. And as Jim Jones is watching them drive away, his lawyers say to him, it's not that bad. Like, they didn't take that many people. It's okay. And he kind of stared after the truck and he said, today they take 20, tomorrow they'll take 60. And he walked away. A few moments later, a truck would leave Jonestown following the congressman's truck with 7 to 8 armed men on it. Now, at the Georgetown outpost of the People's Temple, Jim Jones gets a call from his father. And his father says, you're going to meet Mr. Frazier, which was code for it's time for revolutionary suicide. We're all going to die. Jim Jones Jr. asks, are you sure there's no other way? And he's like, yeah, there's no other way. Go get everybody, the whole team, bring them back here. We have to do this together. Jim Jones Jr. is like, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. He gets his brother. They talk about it. They're trying to figure out a way they can minimize the damage. They're trying to find a way they can buy some time. So they basically distract the woman who's taking the calls in the radio room because they don't want her to call San Francisco and let everybody know at that office that it's time to kill themselves, because basically they're going to make this an orchestrated worldwide event. Everybody at the same time will do this. Stephen told somebody he trusted to call the home office and let them know not to make a move until they heard from him. And they also make sure that the woman who's operating the radio room doesn't leave and doesn't do anything. When Leo Ryan and the truck got to the airstrip, the planes were already there and landed, but there wasn't enough room for everybody on both the planes. 9 people would have to stay behind, and nobody wanted to stay behind, understandably so. So they're all kind of arguing about who is most important to get on the plane and go. None of the defectors obviously want to stay because they already feel like their lives are in danger. The media says they need to get back home because they have deadlines to make and they got to get the story out. And everybody's like arguing about who's going on the plane. And as they're arguing, the truck with the armed men on it from Jonestown pulls up and kind of parks at the side of the airstrip and watches them bickering. Now, Larry Layton had sneaked a gun under his poncho, and what he was planning on doing was getting on the plane with everybody, and while they were up there, he was going to shoot the pilot in the head, and they would all die, and he would basically sacrifice himself for that. Jones had told him to do that, but when he saw and discovered there was 2 planes, and he couldn't take out both planes because he could only be on one, he had to figure out a different plan. So he wanted to make sure he got on the plane with the defector. So he's arguing, saying he's a defector, he has to go first. There's no way around it. And the other men who are parked there with their weapons, they're basically the backup plan. Leo Ryan never had a chance at this point. The men who were sitting and waiting in the truck pulled out their guns and started firing at the people who were standing on the airstrip. Then Larry Layton pulls out his hidden poncho gun and he starts firing as well. Some people were already on the plane and some people had escaped by running off into the woods when the firing started. But a lot of people got hit. What really bugs me about this whole story is there was a Guyanese plane right on that same runway that had been broken down, and they were kind of working on it, trying to get it working again, and they just sat there and watched this happen and didn't interfere or do anything at all because they said it was just Americans shooting other Americans and it wasn't their problem. Once the assassins had done their damage and driven away, the survivors emerged from the plane and from the woods to check the damage of what had been done. It became clear that 5 people were dead, including Congressman Leo Ryan. Jackie Spire was badly injured, maybe mortally. And then the plane that was supposed to carry them to safety, it just flew off, leaving the dead and the wounded and the surviving right there on the airstrip where they'd just been shot at. There was not going to be another plane coming until the next day because it was hard enough to land on that airstrip in the light, much less the dark. So all they really had the choice to do was cover the dead bodies, try to keep the wounded alive, and camp out until somebody got help to them. Back at Jonestown, Jim Jones' son Lou gets on the loudspeaker and tells everybody that there's an important meeting they all have to get to the pavilion. And nobody was really surprised by this. Meetings were common, as we've already talked about, and they assumed Jones would have a lot to say about the congressman's visit, about the defectors, and he would probably be ranting for hours, so it was going to be a long one. As everyone's milling around and getting to the pavilion, Maria Katsaris and Jim Jones are talking about the Flavor Aid potion that they're going to serve everybody tonight. And he made a face and said, is there any way to make it less bitter? So apparently somebody had already tried this potion to see what it tasted like and told Jim before they died what it tasted like. And she says, no, there's no way to make it less bitter. This is just what it tastes like. And he says, well, at least will it be quick? And she says, yes, it's quick and it's pretty much painless too. She's lying. It's not painless at all. It's horrible. Cyanide basically robs the body of the ability to absorb oxygen into the bloodstream. So you essentially are just suffocated to death. And the last couple of minutes are just convulsions, foaming at the mouth, seizures, just horrible, horrible stuff. So I don't know what she's talking about. So Jim tells her, okay, that's great. Can you just go back with Dr. Schacht and see if you can make this less bitter? And then bring everything out so we can give it to people. And then he goes up, stands at the center of the pavilion, and gives this speech about how it's over. Larry Layton is gonna shoot the pilot in the head, the plane's gonna go down, everybody on it's gonna die, and they're never gonna leave them alone after this. They're going to assume that everybody in the temple had something to do with the deaths of everybody on that plane, and they're gonna come after them. It's over. We have to end this now. Wouldn't you rather end this respectfully on our own terms, rather than have people come in here with guns, invade us, steal our children, kill us, because that's what's gonna happen. We need to do this now.
If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace.
We're all ready to go. If you tell us we have to give our lives now, we're ready. I'm pretty sure all the rest of the brothers are with me.
Understand, a lot of people at this point thought this was another test. They had been through so many white nights. They'd been through so many revolutionary suicide practice runs. They thought it was just another one of those. They didn't actually think they were going to drink poison this time. So one of the women in the crowd shouts out, what about Russia? You know, you've been saying we're going to go to Russia. What about Russia? And he's like, do you think Russia's going to want us after this? They're not going to want us. She responds, well, I believe as long as there's life, there's hope. The Jonestown nurses appear with barrels of syringes that have this poisonous liquid inside, because Jones says he wants the children to go first. He says he will allow any parent who wants to go with their children to get in line with the kids and they can die together.
Let's get calm, let's get calm. To us, we had nothing we could do. We can't separate ourselves from our own people. For 20 years laying in some old rotten nursing home.
And while all this is going on, people crying, people screaming, people trying to understand why this is happening, you just hear Jones saying like, okay, hurry up, you take some. You know, he's talking and telling people it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay, this is what we need, and then he's like, here, take some more, take some more. He's just urging these people on. This is why I constantly say this is not a suicide, this is a homicide. This man is a mass murderer.
Hurry, hurry, my children, hurry. All I say, does not fall into the hands of the enemy. Hurry, my children. Hurry. There's seniors out here that I'm concerned about. Hurry. I don't want to leave my seniors to this mess. Quickly, 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 quickly.
Marceline Jones makes one final stand and she screams, you can't do this. Her kids, her normal support system, her reason for living, most of them are not there. Thankfully, they were in Georgetown and they had no plans of coming back. But these two boys, Jim Jones and Stephen especially, they were usually the voice of reason along with Marceline in the compound. They were the ones who always had a level head and people respected them. Had they been there, I wonder if they could have joined Marceline in urging people to reconsider what was happening and to maybe take down their father, because somebody should have just grabbed a gun and shot him, honestly. But understand as well, there's armed guards all around the pavilion, so nobody really had a chance. Jim Jones looks at Marceline and he says, listen, your kids are all gonna be dead soon or already are. You've got nothing left to live for, so you've got 45 minutes, better come to terms with it.
Mother, 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 please. Mother, please, 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 don't do this, don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this. Free at last. Please, keep your emotions down, keep your emotions down. Children, it will not hurt if you'll be quiet. If you'll be quiet. There's nothing to death. It's like Max said. It's just stepping over in another plane. Don't be this way. Stop this hysterics. This is not the way for people who are socialists and communists to die. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. All they're doing is taking a drink to go to sleep. That's what death is, sleep. Whatever, I'm tired of it all.
Once the babies and small children are all gone, it's time for the adults to take their turn. And there's still people now, especially after witnessing how the children died, realizing this is serious, this is happening, and people started to panic. A lot of them did go right up and take the poison. A lot of them still believed in him and still believed that he would bring them to a better life after this, but a lot of them did not want to do it. They probably assumed that drinking poison and dying was preferable to being shot in the head by one of the many people who was pointing guns at them, and they knew it was going to be one way or the other. Many of these people were also injected with poison from behind, which signifies to me they didn't want to do it. They were forced. This was a massacre of the highest degree. As they all died, Jones kept talking, babbling on about his normal garbage that he babbled on about, and he would interrupt himself every so often to ask somebody to bring more vats of poison or to urge somebody to take more poison. Pretty soon, everybody in the compound was dead, including Jim Jones, but he didn't die from poison. He died from a gunshot wound. We're still not sure today whether he was shot by somebody else or he killed himself. The actual story is that he did kill himself, but I almost wonder if one of the guards maybe was like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to die, and he shot Jim and escaped and just never said anything. Tim and Greystone never got the child back they fought so viciously for, because 6-year-old John Victor Stone was one of the first to be administered poison, along with Carolyn Layton's son, Chemo, and so many other innocent children. Days later, rescue planes would fly over Jonestown and never forget the sight they saw. They said it looked like confetti scattered all over the ground, because everybody had different colored t-shirts on and they were just laying there on the ground, one on top of the other sometimes, because they died in each other's arms. They died next to their families, their friends, their loved ones, their children. We have to keep in mind 1/3 of Jonestown was small children. So about 300 small children were massacred this day. They were fed poison against their will and brought to an early death because of one man who decided that he wanted to just control everybody he met. This is hard for me to say after everything we've just heard and learned, but Jim Jones, had he taken a different path, had he gone a different way, he could have done a lot of good in the world. He could have been another Martin Luther King Jr. He could have been the great man that his mother prophesied he would be. He had the charisma, he had the work ethic, he had the ideas. But they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And because he let power and control get to his head, and I do think that he was mentally ill, I think there was something wrong with him. Because in the end, he had the decision to let the people live or make them die. And he chose to make them die. That was his choice. After everything he'd done, all the good, all the bad, that final decision could have been a good one. And even if he had been still remembered as the crazy cult leader, he would not have been remembered as the man who killed over 900 people for no reason, because that is how he's remembered now. He wanted to be remembered for his great act of revolutionary suicide. I'm pretty sure nobody thinks of what he did as a great act of revolutionary suicide. Some people did escape from Jonestown that day. One of the elderly people was asleep through the whole thing and woke up to a town of dead people. And a lot of people who saw the children being poisoned kind of snuck away into the night, leaving their own children and their own families behind. Larry Layton was the only person prosecuted for any of the events in and around Jonestown. His first trial took place in 1981, and it resulted in an 11-1 vote for acquittal on faulty charges of conspiracy to kill Congressman Leo Ryan. The second jury, however, found Larry guilty. Some people think Larry Layton was the fall guy for what happened at Jonestown because he was pretty much the only one left alive that anybody could point at and say you had a gun in your hand and you shot at people and you're directly responsible for this. A lot of people wonder if Larry should have gone to prison. He went to prison for 18 years for his part in the Jonestown massacre and for his part in Leo Ryan's death. A lot of people think he shouldn't have gone to jail because he was acting on orders or because he was brainwashed or whatever. I sort of disagree because you had a gun, you were shooting at people, you were gonna shoot a pilot in the head to take down a plane with everybody on it. No matter how brainwashed you are, no matter how messed up in the head you are, you still have to be accountable for these things. There are a lot of good books and media about this case if you want to look further into it. I couldn't possibly have covered every single small detail, but this case is insane. There's so much in it. It should be made into a more realistic and a more comprehensive movie. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I spent a lot of time on this case and I'm relieved now that it's over. I have the closure that you feel when you're finished telling a story. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think in the comments. And I will see you next time. Stay kind and stay beautiful. Bye.
Shed your light into this empty space. I held you up when everything around you fell. Carried you to try and save you from yourself. Oh, I tried and I tried, but you burned those bridges down. Ready